Joséphine Baker, une grande artiste, humaniste, militante, résistante. Et dans ces temps difficiles, je pense qu'elle est un modèle pour nous tous. Jean Monnet said, "Men accept change only when it's necessary, and they see necessity only when there is a crisis, where we are." So transition is now. The health, economic, ecological, and social crisis and the rapid transformation of the world of work call for structural changes. In these 2 days, we will speak a lot of new business model and ecological transition. Everyone reminds that the IPCC estimate that the current trajectory for climate warming is plus 4% by 2100. According to Climate Action Tracker, the COP26 commitments could bring us back to 2.4 plus of trajectory, which remains insufficient, but it's better. And in all these days, we are going to speak a lot of new business model, ecological transition. But my goal this afternoon is to convince you that it's also a new social model that we need. Let's take some examples. A world at plus 4% in 1 century is a world where sea levels will have risen between 70 and 120 centimeters more, threatening countries such as the Netherlands or Bangladesh, generating dozens of millions of climate migrants. The oceans feed 3 billion of people on Earth, but with their acidity, which threatens marine life, it will destroy a big part of the food which is available for humanity, especially in the least developed countries. At the same time, women and children are 14 times more likely to lose their lives because of natural disaster. So the transition cannot be only economic, financial, and ecological. It has to be social. The COVID-19 has led to an increase of inequalities between countries, between genders, and between generations. ILO, IMF, World Bank, OECD all show that these inequalities have grown a lot since 2 years. Before, globalization has helped millions of people to go out of poverty. It's not more true. The UN estimates that the pandemic could increase the rate of extreme poverty from the current 10% of the population to 18% of human beings on Earth. And it affects mostly, disproportionately, women and children. The pandemic could lead up to 100 million people facing food insecurity and even hunger. If we're speaking of the economic power and empowerment, 1 out of 2 women in the world have a job, mainly informal, compared to 3/4 of men. It's a question of social justice, but also an economic lever for development. According to OECD, 50% reduction in the gap between women's and men's labor force participation rates could add, in the next 4 years, 2.5 percentage points to be projected growth in baseline GDP in OECD country, and from plus 15 to 30% of GDP in developing countries. So if we are rational, if we are human, but we are rational too, the economic rationality should be to empower women economically, quickly, especially in the crisis where we are. A study by UNESCO and World Bank found that the 2/3 of the poorest countries have reduced their spending of education because of the crisis. In these countries, more than 1 out of 2 children is unable to read a text adapted to his age. This proportion is growing to 60% now. As for women, empowerment and investing in education is absolutely needed for social cohesion, for economic development, and just because we are human. If there is one planet, there is one humanity. Due to this crisis, we are also an increase of children going back to work. When I mean children, I don't mean 70 years old. I mean 5, 10, 12 years old. Just imagine, you are parents too, what it means. And according to ILO, the International Labour Organization, 160 million children are working today. They don't go to school, and they work in agriculture, in mining, in very difficult conditions. At the same time, the crisis has accelerated a huge transformation of the world of work, which has started before, but was increasing. The Institute for the Future estimates that 85% of the jobs in 2030 do not yet exist today. According to OECD, 15% of the jobs are threatened by automation, and half will be deeply transformed. In fact, if you compare different studies, you can for sure say that one job out of two will be created, destroyed, or transformed in the next 10 years because of the three major trends: digitalization, climate change, and demographic. According to the OECD, the lifetime of a technical skill has gone from 30 years in the 70s to 2 years now. Now, when you learn something technical, the value is for 2 years. It's a big shift. It means that not only the investment in prior education, the investment in lifelong learning is vital for people who are working, but vital for economy and business and companies that will not find the resources they need if they don't invest massively in lifelong learning. So the job content is changing, skills are changing, and we'll need coalition of massive private and public investment for upskilling, reskilling, and lifelong learning all the time. Upskilling, reskilling will be normal in the cycle of life now. This will not be something exceptional or for some people. The job content is changing, but also the ways of working. No need to mention teleworking. I think that all businesses understand that they will never come back exactly the way it was before. Today, we're in a hybrid mode in this conference. It will be the same in many business occasions. But also the aspiration, the expectations of youth are changing. They have started before the crisis, but it's stronger after. What do they ask? Young people ask for more teleworking, more balance between professional and personal life. They want much less or not at all top-down authority. They want autonomy. They want a more environmental efficiency and coherence, and they want a sense of purpose. The business that don't move will not find the resources and the talent they will need tomorrow. At the same time, as you say, the crisis have shifted the power of different sectors. To give an examples, companies and platforms such as Amazon have increased by 30 to 40% their turnover in 1 year, in 2020, while the automotive industry is still at 80% of its pre-crisis level and is facing at the same time the huge change of models because of the climate needs. So humanity has never faced such a change of technology and world of work at this speed, at this scale. It's all company, all sizes of the company, all sectors, all countries. What is encouraging is that the awareness from all players is increasing quite quickly. First, the population, public opinion. For instance, according to Harris Interactive poll of a few months, the first concern of the French people, it was very different a few years ago, is climate change. climate change. 50% of respondents say they are very worried, and 30% that they are worried. It means 80% are worried and more. In its last global risk report, the World Economic Forum notes that business leaders rank 2 climate risks, the loss of biodiversity and the depletion of natural resources, among the 5 most serious risks that could occur between now and 2030. So awareness is there. And you can see it when you see, and it will be part of the discussion here, that green finance is booming. According to Bloomberg, green bond issuance in the first 9 months of this year represented $400 billion US dollar. It's a double of the previous years and could reach 1 trillion in 2 years. I am a member of the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transition, launched by the IEA, the International Energy Agency. We have made proposal on that for the COP26, how you can manage at the same time the ecological transition, the economic growth, and the social-centered content, human-centered. It's very, very critical to align the 3 together. Because the tragedy will be if we were investing in technology for the ecological change, designing new business model, but letting people behind. It will be a social disaster. It will be, at the end, an economic disaster and a political disaster in many countries. So governments have started to move. The European Parliament 1 year ago voted in favor of climate neutrality by 2050. And in July, the Commission proposed to reduce net greenhouse gas emission by 55 by 2030. 1/3 of the investment for the recovery plan of Europe is dedicated to finance a green transition. And the French recovery plan devotes 30 billion to the ecological transition, 35 to the industry, including vocational training, and 35 to social cohesion. So how we relate economic, social, and ecological is more and more obvious. At the OECD, we have the Development Assistance Committee, and 45% of the aid this year has been helping gender equality project, which is new. G7 countries will contribute to almost 3 billion to the Global Partnership for Education, aiming to have 90 million more children going to school, including half of girls at least. 2 years ago, the French were leading the G7, and under the leadership of France, I signed with social partners at the global level, a tripartite declaration with these social partners and the G7 countries, with the goal to build a universal access to social protection. You have to know that 4 billion people on Earth don't have any social protection, any access to medical care. With the pandemic, we realize that not only economy is global, but health is global. How can we protect by solidarity? How can we protect also the other people if more than half the population on Earth have no social protection? So since this declaration 2 years ago, that I had the honor to negotiate, I've made an agreement with ILO, IMF, and OECD, and our experts have worked the last 2 years to find technical and financial solutions. Antonio Guterres has recently declared that this project should be a priority at the end of crisis. It's necessary now to mobilize all actors. And I think what I am speaking of may seem far from the business. It's not. It's the environment of your businesses. Businesses who cannot succeed in a world that's going apart. To reach net zero by 2050, as you know, the need estimated by IEA is to double the investment in new energies, up to $5 trillion US by 2030. In the face of health and environmental crisis, I must say there's a need for protection. But 6 out of 10 workers in the world operate in the informal economy. They have been the first touched by the crisis. They lost their livelihood from one day to another without any safety net. And it's why, as a candidate for the position of DG of ILO, I consider this question of the social protection for all a key priority. It's a key priority for social justice. It's a key priority for health recovery, for women empowerment, but also for economic development. Strengthening women's place in leadership is key also. You know that only 25% of decision-making positions are held by women. Despite the fact that economy is not always rational, that many studies show that the higher return on equity and lower earning risk during the crisis are linked with the number of women in making decision positions. Clearly, each time at a business level, at a country level, where there are more women, more mixity, more diversity in the decision-making process, each time it leads with less risk and more revenue. So let's be logical for question of equity, but for also a question of business. Building social justice, protecting nature, and respecting and developing people are key for transformation and social cohesion and prosperity. It's a matter of justice. It's a matter of development. It's a matter of future. I will let you with the science fiction writer Isaac Asimov. He said, "Today is a day when the present becomes the future. It's now." Thank you.